Hello, everyone. It is that Weems guy. We're back. We missed last week, but we're here for this week, and who knows about next week. And joining us tonight is previous guest Sherman House, who I learned just before hitting the record button, he actually has a minor in bowling.
That's right.
Tell us about the minor in bowling, Sherman.
Well, at the time, I was going to um, my first stint in college, which was the Skagit Valley College in Oak Harbor, Washington. I lived just kitty corner from the bowling alley, which was the remote campus at which the bowling classes took place. And inside that place, there was also a pizza parlor. This is 1994. So at that pizza parlor, you could get a large pizza with your student ID for $7. So and it was it was not like a 2025 size large pizza. This was a
Hmm.
19, mid 90s size pizza, which a large pizza was I mean, that was enough pizza for like 4 days.
Yeah.
And so I would go in there and I would buy a pizza, and you could bowl for, it was a stupid price. It was like 70 cents a game or 75
Hmm.
cents a game. And I think it was like a quarter for shoes to rent shoes.
Yeah.
And then somebody was like, my guidance counselor was like, hey, you need to get your PE credits out of the way. Um, what is there anything you're interested in doing? And it was I was living on an island at the time, so it was like sailing, um, racket sports, like pickleball, which was invented here. Um,
Okay.
and then bowling, and I was like, oh, absolutely bowling. Like I'm at the bowling alley half the time anyway, getting pizza or playing pull tabs. So let me do that, and I did that, and I just loved it because it's, maybe people that aren't really into bowling don't realize this, but when you go to the bowling alley in the afternoon when there's nobody there and there's no social events or leagues or whatever,
Hmm.
it's a lot like going to the shooting range because it's just you and the
Yeah.
balls, or in the pins and the ball, and like it's very technique intensive, and you can really focus in, and it's a very zen sport. So I always said that, like, if I ever built my dream compound, it would have a two-lane bowling alley like Richard Nixon put in the White House, like in the
Hmm.
floor, and then coaxial to it, I would put a range too. So I'd have a range and a bowling alley that were the exact same length.
All right. So if I remember correctly, your undergraduate is in philosophy,
And cell biology. So I have a BS and a BA. Yeah.
right?
And then
And
I
then you,
also have a degree in law enforcement too. Yeah.
right. Then the dental degree
Hmm.
and a minor in bowling.
That's right.
Am I missing anything?
No, no, that's it. And then, I mean, I did my residency, of course, too,
Right.
but yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time you and I like made the list of all of our degrees and stuff while
Degrees.
you were trying to,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
didn't say you didn't mention the bowling in that one.
The funny thing is like, I wouldn't say like I forgot about it. I didn't forget any
Yeah.
of it, but like I just,
Yeah.
after a while, I just kind of didn't say anything about it. And then I got this random text from my son's girlfriend that said, hey, do you really actually have a minor in bowling? And then I was like, yeah, actually I do. And she said, Dazzle just told me that, and I didn't believe him, and I was like, oh, you better believe him. Like it's real.
I actually on my college transcript have credit for a marksmanship class.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, I was a civilian student at a military college.
Right.
And the executive vice president of the college was a retired Air Force full bird colonel, and he
Hmm.
took a liking to me, and he arranged for me to do all kind of stuff. And one of them was is he ordered the ROTC instructors to allow me to take the marksmanship class, and
Wow.
so I have him on my college transcript, a class in marksmanship. Oddly enough, it didn't transfer when I went to a different school.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Oh, yeah. The good old
Oh well.
days.
Oh well. But it shows up on my associate's degree transcript. It doesn't show up on my bachelor's degree.
Yeah. That sucks. I mean, we went to school in the good old days, like when
Yeah.
that kind of thing wasn't even not I don't even want to say like frowned upon. It wasn't even thought of as being
Right.
maligned in any kind of way, I
Yeah.
mean, I always tell people, it blows Dashiell's mind when I tell them that, like, when I was a senior in high school, I took a speech class, and the teacher's name was Miss Hawley, and I gave a demonstration speech on how to load and unload an M1 carbine that I brought to school.
Yeah.
And when I got to school that day, I actually went to the front office, and I had it like in one of those camouflage, zip up kind of
Hmm.
sock cases.
Yeah.
And I had a buttstock magazine carrier that had two 15 round magazines, and
Yeah.
they were loaded. And I held it up like this. I held the case up, and I said, "Hey, just wanted to let you all know I've got my M1 carbine, and I'm giving a speech on how to load and unload a rifle. I'm gonna keep it in my band locker with my saxophone." And they were like, "Cool, tell your mom we said hi." Like, that was the full extent of it. And then I literally went to the class, showed how to
Hmm.
load, put a round in it,
Yeah.
put the safety on, and then, you know, took the magazine out, racked a round out, like into the audience. Not into the audience. It didn't hit anybody. I
Yeah.
mean, just, like
Right.
the round, I didn't try
Yeah.
and catch it or anything.
Yeah.
With live ammo, and nobody died.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
nothing bad happened. So
Yeah.
I
We
always
had.
joked and said that, like, if there was ever an active shooter event at my school, when I graduated from high school in 1993, that, like, all of us kids, that were, the savvy ones, like, we would be pushing each other like down in the hallways to get to our truck first to
Yeah.
get a long gun to go shoot that dude.
Yeah.
So
We had people that showed up to school with deer rifles and shotguns and stuff in the truck, like in the gun racks
absolutely.
where you could see them. Or
Same.
uh,
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
the Knowles boys always had a 30-30
Yep.
in the dashboard of the truck laid up there. Said
Yeah. Yeah.
nobody ever said a word.
Yeah. Well, like
Um,
I said, I grew up on an island, so
yeah,
at the narrowest part of the island, I think it's less than a mile in width. So you could only shoot deer here with a shotgun with buckshot in it. So
yeah.
everybody had buckshot, and then the other thing that we shot here was pheasant. So people would have those Mossberg starter kits, that had the
Hmm.
18-inch barrel and the 28-inch
Yeah,
barrel, and
yeah.
that's kind of what you did, unless you had something that you inherited from your grandpa or your father.
There you go. Something else that came to mind as you were talking about the pizza for $7 that you'd eat on for 4 days.
Hmm.
Man, when I was in college, Arby's used to do the five for
Five
five
for five. Oh
roast
yeah.
beef, and I
Yeah.
would go grab that and have one for supper that night, and then that would feed me for several other days. And I have
Yeah.
used that example to talk about the minimum wage in the college classes that I teach. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, Arby's used to be five for five roast beef, and then
Hmm.
it went from 5 to 5.35 when the
Hmm.
minimum wage increased. At the
Right.
next minimum wage increase, it went to 5 for 5.95. And I looked it up
Yeah.
like the last time they offered it was like 5 for 7 something or
Yeah.
whatever. It's like, so are you really, if you're a college age student, you think getting the minimum age increase is a good thing?
Yeah.
Does it really increase your buying power?
No.
And so I taught economics based on Arby's roast beef sandwich prices.
You could even talk about supply chain stuff too. Do you remember when when they moved the goalpost on us, and it used to be five roast beef for five, and then
Hmm.
they switched to five barbecues for five. So they put barbecue sauce on it, so it could have less meat, but it gave the appearance that it was the same size. And then it was regular roast beefs four for five, and then beef and cheddars three for five. So like, the components were all basically the same, but the price was different, and that's when that down went downhill. That's when Arby's started really putting the screws to everybody.
Yeah, and now they've got like all kind of crazy stuff on the menu. And
Yeah, yeah,
all right,
gyro and weird
yeah,
French fries and everything else.
yeah. Oh, I'm still mad about the potato cakes going away.
Yeah, I was never a potato cake guy. I like the curly fries with a side of cheddar, which
The
is not
curly
real
fries,
cheddar.
the curly fries are fine, but I'm still mad about the potato cakes going away.
I don't know if I even ever. I remember what they look like, but I think I had like a bad association with those because they had
Uh,
something like that at my high school cafeteria, and I think I got hit by a couple of those before.
yeah, I went to a small private school that did not have a lunchroom, so that wasn't any
Oh,
chance of that. Now I did end up graduating from the public high school, but I was only there for like my senior year, part of my junior
gotcha.
year. I went to a private school all the way up until then. But well, if there's anybody still with us after all of that, of course they ought to expect it by now.
Yeah, I mean, come on. If we just talked about gun stuff, that's so boring.
All right. So in the show group tonight, someone asked that you and I specifically discuss a meme that has been going around on social media, and I did see this pop up in my Instagram feed the other day, and it is from a Instagram channel, police training, police post training, is I think is the name of it,
Mhm.
and it's just words. It says the average number of rounds fired by officers in an officer-involved shooting is 7.59. And it's like making the bill drill the single most important drill to incorporate into your training.
Well, let's start with the acceptance of those statistics and understand that 68.4% of all statistics are made up on the spot. The thing that I was that you talked about this like maybe 2 or 3, maybe it was 4 years ago, about the relevance of a bill drill for tactical
Yeah,
training.
yeah,
And while I think it's useful as a skill, people get, especially people outside the training capable community, get skill and tactic mixed up all the time. And my thing is like what's a good time for a bill drill? I think is like 3 seconds, from the draw, less than 3 seconds. Um, I would put the point up that where that person is at shot number one and where they are at shot number six might not even be in the same elevation.
you're talking about the
Depend
person you're shooting at,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. So, when you're shooting it against an IDPA or an IPSC
Mm-hmm.
target or even a B8, like that thing is stationary and it's not moving.
Right.
And when you shoot it, it doesn't react. When you shoot a person, if you've ever shot anything, I mean, if you shot, you know, people, deer, birds, like there's an effect that happens pretty quick if your shot placement is effective. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, as Tom says, like that thing falls off your front sight.
Yeah.
Um, and, if my first shot, kapow, goes where it's supposed to, but I program myself, now I got to rip off 5 more shots to that same point of impact, then I think that's just a hokey thing. And I don't like this whole like shoot as fast as you can, past the point where you can be absolute. I mean, the most important thing to me is like 100% accuracy, but also 100% accountability. Like
Right.
the best backstop that you're going to find outside, in a street, real life circumstance is the bad guy. And, anything else is not a miss, but it's a bullet that hits an unintended target. And I don't, I just, that's kind of the corollary to that everybody seems to forget. And not not being a commissioned law enforcement officer anymore, like, if I screw something up, like it's 100% on me, and I've got a lot to lose. So I'd rather shoot slow and go, well, he soaked that one up. Let's do another one.
Right.
Let's do another one, and make sure that they're coming back to that same point. Now, I do understand the skill relevance of, like what Kurt Clark calls predictive shooting, which means that my index return and my point of aim returns to the same home uh,
Mm-hmm.
after every shot, based on your positioning and the alignment with your eye. That's a good thing to be able to have. You want to be able to follow the front sight or your dot and recoil, and then see it return to your original, point of aim or within that wobble space. But and the faster you can do that, the better. But that's one of those things that doesn't translate from skill to tactic, that folks overlook all the time, and then they just go, oh, bing, no, like shut that off. That's the thing that sucks about memes, and like what the whole history of a meme is. Has anybody ever told you that?
Tell us. Tell
All
us.
right, so I got this from my philosophy degree, and I remember when I heard it, I was like, "What a stupid name!" Like meme. And when I don't know if this happens to you, but like I have, kind of battled with dyslexia. It's way better now, but when I was a kid, it was a struggle. But I remember when I read this book, it was a 1970, it was either 77 or 78. Richard Dawkins, Dr. Richard Dawkins, wrote a book called The Selfish Gene, and it was about epigenetic factors in um, evolution. So basically, things like behaviors that are relative to improving the fitness of a specific group of genes that are transmitted to the future. Meaning that, like, one of these things that we don't think of as a gene, like when I go, hey, Lee, check out this, red crested hummingbird, like we could look at the genes and we can go, oh, well, these ones are red, and then some of these ones are green, and these ones tend to have more eggs than these. The thing that there's things there that we don't take into account. One of those things is like what they call nest building behaviors. So like if you're better at building a nest and your eggs are better protected, then your um, offspring get to the future, which is,
Mhm.
that's what every species is trying to do, is guarantee their genetic immortality by
Yeah.
moving their offspring to the next generation. Well, Dawkins proposed this thing. So we have a gene, which is the smallest transmissible piece of genetic information. So it's gene, Gene. A meme is the smallest piece of transmissible communication. So he called it a meme. And when I read it, being dyslexic at the time, I thought it was a meme. So I didn't realize it was a meme until
Yeah.
I went to class the next day and we talked about it. And then I was like, thank God I didn't have to read that passage out loud in front of the class and be like, you know, the smallest transmissible piece of information is a meme, like
Yeah.
no. So anyway, that's why we say memes. So the thing
Yeah.
that sucks about these memes is it's kind of like if I just quote you something that I'm calling a fact, but
Mhm.
there's no attribution. There's no
Right.
paper trace or paper trail to like back up what I'm saying.
Right.
And that's the thing that sucks about these memes is, I could make some complete BS thing and put it up, and it gives the appearance of it being true, but it's not.
Right.
And that sucks because people, especially younger folks, like they've grown up with meme uh, culture as a form of communication. Like to us, it still seems novel and weird, and we do these funny ones that we put on the screen at TatCon and ha ha
Mhm.
ha, and stuff. But like when I was teaching at the university, I would literally send them out to my students, because you can click like class of 2022 and it sends it to the
Mhm.
whole class. And I would put a
Mhm.
picture of Bernie Sanders, like with his mittens and his parka, like sitting in a chair. And I would just say, I'm once again asking for you to submit your projects today by 11 a.m. And like
Mhm.
people knew exactly what I was talking about, but it
Yeah.
wasn't, there was no text like, that I typed, like put to a paragraph. It was a picture of Bernie Sanders with those words imposed on it, just like
Right.
he, did. And that became like a thing. So what I think, just kind of sucks as that form of communication, where the flaw is that people put these things up and have you ever heard like that it's 7 rounds average in an OIS? Like, I mean,
That's the first time I've ever seen that specific fact quoted.
yeah,
Saying 7.59 rounds.
yeah,
I one want to see the data that was used to determine that
yeah,
before and then I need to know that whether or not that number is valid before I start trying to extrapolate anything
from it.
from that. Um, Also, if the average is 7.59, that means there's shootings where there's a lot more than 7.59
And
fired.
there was other ones where there was less. Yeah.
Right. And that tells me that peace officers were firing emotionally rather than logically.
Methodically. Yeah.
And that's easy for us to say sitting here in our homes on a computer rather than when
Hmm.
someone's trying to kill us. All right.
Yeah.
Um, but we well, they're shooting this high number of rounds, so we should come up with shooting drills that has a high number of rounds in them. That seems like a backwards uh, way to go about that to me. We should be looking at why are we firing that many rounds, and is there
Hmm.
anything that we can do to mitigate that? And I think one is uh, vastly improve across the board firearms training and get away from standing in a single spot shooting a qualification course in a overly generous amount of time with no decision making involved. no processing of information involved while we're shooting, and we actually start teaching people how to run the gun properly. If the 7.59 rounds is correct, if that happened across the board for all 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States, we would see that number go down.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing to think through, but like, have you heard DB's
Hmm.
solution to this?
Well, go ahead.
Like, I just listened to this podcast the other day
Hmm.
on primary and secondary, and I was like,
Uh,
"Oh, that's interesting." Is and this would actually play well in the politics of the state that I currently reside in, and
right.
other uh, capacity restricted states, but
Hmm.
using a like a single action Ruger flat top, in 357 for,
Yeah.
for it's impossible. It's impossible to shoot those quickly. Like I've even
Right.
tried with my new model Blackhawk, do like a modified test,
Hmm.
at 10 yards, which is, with a pistol is 10 yards, 10 seconds,
Hmm.
and 10 rounds. And but I do it with a revolver with 6 rounds in 6 seconds at 10 yards. And it's hard. It's hard to do with
Yeah.
a double action revolver,
Yeah.
and get perfect, some keep it all in the 9 ring. Um, but if you slow it down to, try and finish it in under 10 seconds,
Yeah.
uh, it's 100% doable.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that that's a good solution. And I know if Tom Givens heard me say that, he'd kick me right in the pants. But so Tom, if you're watching this, just kidding. But yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
that that's an interesting way to think about it. I think that, you've talked before, like when you had the big brawl with Carl and Ernest, about the
Hmm.
double action only Beretta. Like, I remember that era in law enforcement, like when like the 92 and the 96D were like, being pimped real hard, especially in Washington State. We had the state patrol was using 92s at the time, and there was a lot of places that were kind of going to that DAO model because everybody wanted to compete with the Glock, having a single trigger pull,
Hmm.
instead of a DASA gun. And the very first time I ever shot one of those, it was a Smith and Wesson Model 5946, and I was like, "Wow, this is kind of cool." But like, the difference is when you're on the line with one of those things and you're shooting the drills that you're required to shoot, you go, "Wow, I can't shoot these anywhere near as fast." Like, there's no like pow pow, and like maybe like a point two, 0.19, point two if you're really smoking with a
Yeah.
DASA or a Glock, compared to one of those DASA guns where it's like, if you're really fast, you're like a 0.23, maybe, and maybe even slower than that, maybe like a 0.3. So you're shooting a lot slower, but you're really capturing that sight picture, every single time. So I do think that there's something to be said for slowing down. That's the cool thing about revolvers, and like, as much as we, you know, kind of kick the dog of revolvers, and I've got a bunch of them, but the ones that I keep that I've had for like 3 decades now, are the ones that work really well. There's ones that I get where I'm like, oh, this thing's, either doesn't shoot to my eye to like my standard, which is 3-inch pacer at 25 yards. If
Hmm.
I can't do that like on command, then with the regular ammos that I keep on hand, like I'm not keeping it. Like it might as well be worthless to me. I could sell it, I got rid of a Smith and Wesson Model 19 recently, and I know that the ghost of Bill Jordan's probably gonna, wake up and, first thing he's gonna say is like, get me the hell out of this box. And then the second thing he's gonna say
Hmm.
is, why did you sell your Model 19? I like just couldn't get that thing to shoot, and I tried it
Right.
with all of my usual stuff, and I just couldn't get it to shoot to my standard. But it would shoot like a really nice, probably 1.5-inch group with the sight moved all the way to the right with everything I shot it with. And that doesn't make sense. That doesn't
Right.
make mechanical sense. So to you or I, we would notice that, but to like the casual dude that, shoots maybe 3 or 4 boxes of ammo a year at most,
Yeah.
they're not even gonna notice.
Right.
They might not even notice that that sight's moved all the way over.
Right.
So with a revolver, it's a different kind of thing because you have that longer trigger pull or the DAO gun, to pull through and realize that you can do a little bit of steerage there that you can't do
Yeah,
with a single action, like a hammer fired gun or with a striker fired gun.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, slowing down, I get dogged a lot because I do these, I do classes and competitions and stuff, and I try to make myself like shoot faster, like I'll be waiting for my spot on the relay, and the guy before me is
mm,
like, "Eep." And then it's my turn. They're like, "You ready?" I'm ready. All right, shooter ready, stand by. Eep. You know, and my shots are all like good,
yeah,
like they're very accurate, but not necessarily as fast. And I used to be like, oh man, like I suck at these performance classes. Um, but I realized like, I'm gonna shoot that same way if I'm in the parking lot later that night at an
right.
Arby's getting 5 for 5.
That's
But
right.
but that guy who is all amped up, in the performance class next to me, when he does that same thing, he'll probably still make his hits, but he might make some hits all around the parking lot too.
Right. Right.
So that's
And
that's kind of the concern. There's a real slippery slope there as far as rate of fire versus accuracy, and it's tough to find like what's good enough. Like who knows?
right.
Nobody really knows. So
Right. You mentioned DB Daryl Bulkey. I've
hmm
heard him talk numerous times about when he was running his agency's firearms training. He stressed an actual real failure drill
yeah.
to the chest, assess,
hmm
and if a
And
third
then
shot's needed, then go to the head.
yeah,
And when he started pushing that really hard, which is how the failure drill was actually designed,
yeah,
with their agency's training, the number of rounds the officers fired in officer involved shootings dropped dramatically
yeah,
because they
yeah,
had been trained to, all right, come out, put two center mass. If I still need to do something because this guy's still a threat, still doing whatever it was that caused me to shoot him in the first place. Now I transition up, and if the head's still there,
let them
then
have it.
I let them have it, and that was ending the fights, and they weren't having these shootings with 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rounds anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of reinforces what I was saying earlier is if we're training people to a different standard, this is what you do, and we actually teach them how to run the gun and teach them to think with the gun in their hand and all that kind of stuff, we'll see a drop in these numbers if that number is correct.
Yeah.
Um, Now, one thing I wanted to come back to you with, because you made a comment that sparked the paper is a two-dimensional target.
hmm
It's stationary. It's it's not moving. It's not reacting to getting shot. And then
hmm
you talked about being very precise with your shots and the like. We didn't really go into your background other than your minor in bowling to start off with. But when you weren't getting your minor in bowling, your degree in law enforcement, your degree in philosophy, becoming a combat dentist, uh, working as a reserve peace officer after you were an armored car driver, at some
hmm
point along the way, you were also an EMT,
That's right.
right?
hmm
Um, I know you've heard this adage too. Someone who's being very precise when they're shooting that stationary target. Some guy who thinks he knows what he's doing. Oh, you need to speed up. You're
Right.
shooting too tight of a group. Speed up so your group opens up so you spread the damage.
Yeah.
You've worked on a lot of people on the side of the road, being a ditch doctor.
hmm
Do they just stand there and absorb these very precise shot groups, or do they kind of move around and
Yeah, they move around, and that's the funny thing about pistols. Like as Gary Roberts says, like if you're like, "Hey Doc, what
who
is
is
a
also a combat dentist, by the way?
correct?" Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's a hospital dentist as well. So, um, people will say, "Hey, Doc Roberts, like, or Doc GKR, can you
Mhm.
tell me what is a federal HS 9 millimeter 147 grain HST goes?" And he goes, "Oh, it punches a hole." And then they go, "Oh, cool, cool. All right. What about a 45 ACP, 230 grain federal HST. And he goes, oh, that. Yeah, it punches a hole.
Yeah.
Well, what about the new federal punch for 22 long rifle?
Yeah.
Oh, it punches a small hole.
Yeah.
Like, so pistol rounds don't, they don't do much. Like, I don't know if you remember, but like when I was working at the university and I was still on social media, for anybody listening, I'm not on social media anymore. So please don't message me. If you have my contact info, then you're who can contact me. But I would post pictures of surgical cases that I had where people had been shot in the face. So at that hospital, hospital dentistry slash oral surgery, the area of real estate that came into the county, the metro
Mhm.
hospital emergency room that fell into our jurisdiction, if you will, was anything from the floor of the orbits to the Adam's apple. So if there was a bullet hole, a stab wound, an infection, oncology, anything in that area, they'd call us.
Mhm.
And so, you know, in Nashville, Tennessee, like in the part of town that I was in, which was an interesting part of town, there was a lot of those kinds of
Yeah.
shootings. And so we took care of a lot of those cases. And I would regularly see people that had been shot in the face at point blank range with 22, 32, 38, 380s, pretty much everything that we would see. So imagine this: the only people that I see are the people that make it to the hospital alive.
Right.
If there's CPR in progress and things like that, I don't ever see those people because even if they revive them, they're going to go to the ICU, and the bullet there is, if it stays in place, is an afterthought.
Right.
Um, but all of the ones that we saw, these are people that either managed to walk out of the hospital or were admitted to the hospital and stay and weren't in a life-threatening state, and needed to have the bullet removed for one reason or
Mhm.
another. So all of these small caliber bullet wounds were, what we commonly call mouse gun calibers. And they were um not necessarily damage, like severely damaging, disfiguring. Yes, I mean, you got a bullet hole in your face, especially if it goes into the cartilaginous part or the soft part of our nose. That's going to mess up your nose. You're not going to look symmetrical, and no matter how good of a job we do putting it back together, you're always going to look like you got something happened to your nose, or something happened to your eye sockets or something. It can mess you up cosmetically and sometimes functionally, um, but it wouldn't necessarily kill them, of
Mhm.
course. But a lot of those things, a lot of those shootings, even though there wasn't a tremendous amount of physical damage, there was enough of a psychological effect from somebody getting shot in the face that whatever they were doing before, they stopped doing. So I do think that there is a bit of like a psychological deterrence to, even a 22. Um, but I don't know if I feel confident to like hang my hat on that unless
Mhm.
it's like a contact shot, like if I'm pressing up
Right.
a revol like a, one of them little guardians to something,
Right.
and touching around off. Aside from that, pistol calibers are largely ineffective. I did see one case where a guy had been shot with a 9 millimeter service round. Um, I believe it was um, a Hydra shock, federal Hydra shock, and it
Mhm.
actually went in this guy's jaw. Um, Immediately expanded and punched a pretty good size, probably about 45, 47 caliber hole right in the side of his mandible, blew up two teeth, went through the floor of his mouth, and then exited out the side and then kind of lodged in the substance of his cheek and his parotid gland, and bled very profusely from the floor of his mouth. So much so that he immediately exited the car that he was trying to commandeer from the fellow that shot him. And the responding law enforcement officers followed the blood trail that was coming from the floor of his mouth to where he was hiding in the bushes, and he was taken into custody, and that's how he ended up in our care. But um, pistol wounds are, largely, um, you know unless placement is paramount. Like the placement of the bullet was really really spot on. Those wounds are largely survivable, and whether they stop doing what they're doing
Right.
that's a case to case basis. The opposite is true for uh, shotgun and rifle wounds. Like I only saw a few of those in my time, but those were all like essentially, um, you know, what we called. I'm sure you say it too, like DRT. Like dead right there.
Hmm.
Like you get there and you're like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Oh, hey, you put your box back. Like you don't need all that. Like just come over here and take a look." And you go, "Oh,"
Yeah.
you know. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and out here in the country, when you see somebody that's been shot with a 30-06, like with a Spitzer type bullet or a Blitz type projectile or a 7 mag or a 243 or 7 millimeter odd 8 30-30, any of those larger, intermediate to larger center fire rifle rounds, like, those things are devastating on humans. And then same thing with shotguns. So
Yeah.
I did see a lot of bird shot wounds, like that are, street or parking lot crime,
Hmm.
where there's a shotgun involved and someone goes, "Yeah, I have shells," but like they're bird shot. Um,
Yeah.
and I can say, like we always talk about the relative effectiveness or ineffectiveness of birdshot. Um, and I definitely agree with Tom, about
Yeah.
like, you ever gone hunting with birdshot before? Well, you know what happens sometimes? Sometimes it doesn't even kill the bird.
Yeah.
Like, so the only thing you should be shooting with buckshot is, or with, shooting birdshot with is birds.
Yeah.
Um, that's true, but kind of like if you shoot somebody in the eye with a BB gun, like
Hmm.
a lot of times that will render their eyeball ineffective for the rest of their life. Same thing
Yeah.
goes, it's true, if I was pressed into a survival situation, against foreign invading guerrillas or something like that, and all I had was a shotgun loaded with buckshot, I'd wait till the first guy with the AKM came close and then shoot him in the eyes with the buck or with the bird shot, and then take his
Hmm.
AK. You know what I mean? Like, uh, otherwise, I would agree, that it's for
Yeah.
shooting birds. Um,
Well, you do live
so
in there for that was the target of the remake of Red Dawn.
I do, and I don't know if I told you this or not, but I recently saw this film called The Order. Um, it was a Jude Law film, and it was about the. I might have my dates screwed up. No, I don't. No, I don't, because I was 9 years old when it happened. Um, there was a white supremacist guy that was
Mhm.
the leader of a white Aryan nation slash white supremacist group called the Order, and they had a stronghold on South Whidbey Island, about 25 minutes from, well, not even that far, pretty close to where I grew up. This is in 1984. You probably have heard this because when the Waco thing happened in 92, everybody was like, "Hey, this is the second time that the feds have like burnt up somebody that they didn't like." Well, the first one was Bob Matthews, and
Mhm.
he set up in a house down there at the south end of Whidbey Island. And actually, two of the guys that were my FTOs when I was a cadet were actually there, um, because they were, local PD at the
Mhm.
time, so they saw the whole thing happen. And well, let's just say what happened in the movie and what happened in real life, duh, as a shock to nobody, aren't the same thing.
Right.
So, the FBI didn't throw road flares into the window to try and flush this guy out.
Uh,
That's not true. So anyway,
uh,
um, yeah, I uh, would say that the Pacific Northwest is an interesting place for a lot of strange reasons. Yeah. Yeah, it's
yeah.
also, I don't know if you know this. Here's an interesting point of fact that you'd get a kick out of. It's actually on the books in the law of the Revised Code of Washington, that it's illegal to kill a Sasquatch here.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's, like actual confirmation that that's a real thing here, but I have been outside before and heard noises that I can't say what they were, but I know that they weren't human. I know they
Uh,
weren't wildcats. I know they weren't bears or elk. They were definitely something. So I don't know.
That sounds like to me a bunch of legislators drunk at a dinner party somewhere,
Hmm.
and one of them laughing. And, you know what we need to do? We need to pass a law to make it illegal to kill a Sasquatch. And like somebody writes up the bill and they submit it.
And nobody reads it.
Yeah, and then it
Yeah.
just got through.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Um, Next topic of conversation we have is person of the group asked about the use of weapon-mounted lights for non-law enforcement.
Yeah, I think the elephant in the room, you and I have talked
Mhm,
about this at length, is that
mhm.
as a regular citizen, you can't go pointing guns at other people willy-nilly,
Right.
like period. So let's just say, like, let's just give a hypothetical here. Like, Lee, you fly into SeaTac and you say, "Hey, I'm in SeaTac for a day. Let me see the cool things." I say, "Cool, I'll come pick you up at the airport. We'll go down to the pier, the famous pier of Seattle, so you
Mhm.
can see the places that I hung out when I was in the heyday of my life as a young grunger in the early '90s." So I would take you there, and there's parking lots that are adjacent to the frontage road that runs along the pier, and they're sketchy now, like they're dangerous places to go. So let's
Mhm.
say we go park in one of those. You scan the little QR code thing, pay the box, go walk around. We're milling around. Now it's dark. We walk back to the truck, and some dude pops out from behind parked cars. If you and I pull out our handhelds and immediately spotlight that dude and go, "Hey, what do you want?" No crime has been committed yet by
Right.
either party. Either us as the defenders or him as the possible suspect here. All we've done is shine lights at that guy.
Hmm.
Rewind. If the guy goes, "Hey," when he pops out behind the cars, and you and I both skin out our pistols and we have weapon mounted lights and we illuminate, and both of us have, positive sight pictures and positive target identification on some dude who's like this,
Hmm.
that camera that's above us, that's monitoring who's parking in which spot at the pier parking lot, has now
Yeah.
seen two guys with pistols point weapon mounted lights at a guy who was going to say, like, "Hey, I locked my keys out of my car. Do either of you have a coat hanger?" You know,
Hmm.
oh shit. So now both of us, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. We both have now committed aggravated assault. So, or in Washington State, it's assault and brandishing, and there's a few other things. And in King County, like with the DAs there, like you're never going to have gun rights. You're going to lose your permit. You're going to have probably a felony or a gross misdemeanor at best. All easily avoidable. So, I have a Seattle I have my everyday carry light, which is a
Hmm.
Surefire Stiletto Pro, that was given to me by Andy Stanford. Thank you, Andy Stanford. But I have a Nightcore EDC 137, I think it is, and it has an 8,000 lumen light, and I call that like my Seattle light,
Yeah.
because those 8,000 lumens only work for like 20 seconds, and then you have to like take your finger off the button and let the thing like cool
Cool
down
down.
from
Yeah.
thermite temperature, so it doesn't burn a hole in your jeans.
Yeah.
um but that initial 8,000 uh lumen blast is powerful, to the point where if I got hit with that and my vision was already adapted, if I
Hmm.
had ill intentions at that point, it'd kind of be like having a flashbang go off near you without the bang part.
Right.
um Again, handheld for that, identification purpose prior to getting your gun out, um I think is is good. So I think that the trap that a lot of people fall into is this follows this same um comparison, is, you know Lee, what kind of gun do you carry on duty? Oh, I carry a Glock 19. Oh man, yeah. I mean, I know Glock 19s are popular, but I know that the Navy SEALs carry the SIG P226 because I've seen the SIG website, and they have the one that has the anchor
Hmm.
on it. And, that because they're the SEALs, like that's what I'm going to carry is the SIG 226 and 9 millimeter. Okay. But, like, I mean, the SEALs are out doing SEAL things.
Right.
What are you doing? Are you a SEAL? No, 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 I'm not a SEAL. I'm not law enforcement. I'm not in the military. Like, I'm actually a carpenter. Cool. Why don't you just get a Glock 19? It's much simpler. It does everything that you need to without the added complexity of a double action, single action gun, and difficult to find mags and all this kind of stuff. And then people go, yeah, but I mean, the Navy SEALs use it. So, you know, so just because SWAT teams do it, just because law enforcement does it, just because tier one military groups do it, doesn't mean that there's direct applicability to the regular armed citizen, or the, civilian
Right.
defender, as I call them on my website. Um, it's not the same mission. Your mission as just an armed private citizen, and a civilian, is to just go home. Just go home at the
Right.
end of the day, or accomplish whatever it is you're trying to do. I'm trying to get from the grocery store back to my family. I'm trying to get from my workplace back to my family. Um, so the mission isn't the same, and people get that kind of twisted. Now, I can tell you, and I'm sure that you can too, is even when I would have my Streamlight SL20 that I'd use, with a neck index, or a modified FBI kind of
Hmm.
thing, to illuminate people that, say you get called for an open door, and you end up having to do a building search in something that's a factory that's, currently closed. And you walk in there, yeah, you could get your pistol out, and keep it at like a low, what we'd call like a true low ready position, where it's pointed below the feet of the suspect, and kind of use the secondary beam of the light to
Hmm.
illuminate. It's a lot easier to, and I don't think you lose anything in terms of speed, to do it with the neck index thing, So you could do that. But you and I both know that there's plenty of police officers out there that run around with their lights out, you know, lighting up everything, even things that they don't intend to shoot.
Yep.
Well, let's roll it back to, the firearm safety rules. Like, treat all guns as if they're always loaded. Okay. We
Hmm.
do that. They're not doing that at the moment. Like, never allow the muzzle to cross anything you're not willing to destroy. Like, what if that's just some dude there that is a janitor and he accidentally set off the alarm? That's common.
Yep.
We've all seen that a billion times.
Yep.
Or,
I'm actually
uh,
more shocked to find a burglar alarm that is a real burglary
yes,
than the
than a
other.
false alarm.
Then,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's a myriad of things that it could be, like sometimes people like didn't close the door all the way and it sets off the alarm and they drove
Hmm.
away. Sometimes like Fred and Wilma decided that they're gonna, hook up in the employee lounge after everybody leaves and set off the
Hmm.
motion detectors. Like there's a number of things that it can be. Um, but you don't necessarily want to point your guns at people. Like,
Right.
that's just not good policy. That's something that, if you did shoot somebody, that would be an outside of policy shooting, and now you're subject
Yeah.
to everything bad that happens with that. Well, with regular civilians, that's not a consideration. Now you've committed a crime and now you're going to jail.
Hmm.
More importantly than that, though, I think the thing that people overlook is this: is like, uh I'm in this house by myself. My family is not here. So if I hear a bump in the night, it's one of two things. It's either uh Dashiell's unexpectedly come home from college without telling me, which is be really, really, really unlikely for him to do something like that because he knows who his dad is. Or
Hmm.
B, there's somebody in here that's not supposed to be in here. But do I want to take the risk, waking up and maybe not having my eyeglasses on or having sleep in my eyes or whatever, and light somebody up with a weapon mounted light, think that it's an intruder when it's actually my kid, and accidentally shoot somebody that I didn't intend to shoot, Just like I wouldn't point a loaded gun at him in broad daylight, I wouldn't want to point a weapon mounted light at him in the dark,
Yeah.
So that's the thing I think that is more important. I really like how Claude says, like, if you have a gun for home defense, you need to have a handheld light next to it.
Yeah.
There are, like I said, there are techniques to use, like the secondary beam, to illuminate somebody from a
Mhm.
low ready position, but you got to have the light that'll do that. I did
Right.
low light training with Steve Fisher last month or the month before. It was in September. Um, and there was a guy that had I even made fun of the name, and now I can't even think of what it is. It was like a Streamlight, something or other, like a compact, rechargeable, uh, light. Now I can't remember what it was. But anyway, that thing at like 5 yards wouldn't even like light up the target. You would be hard pressed to like find the keyhole on your pickup truck in a parking lot with how dim this light was. And it didn't get any better as the charge ran down.
Right.
So you have to have a light that's got enough oomph, and to be able to do it. And I think you need to have a light that has a tactical level of light with an immediate press of the button, not something that you got to click through to get to
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
whatever that may be. So for civilians, the application is different. And I think that, you know, it's just crazy. Like people will say things like, well, like Tom's big thing is like, I have my lights on in my house, on a timer. So if you walk in the door or kick the door in, like there's going to be lights on. So wherever I am in my house, like you're essentially backlit wherever
Mhm.
you are in proximity to my doorway, which is, good for the defender, bad for the bad guy. Nobody wants to be backlit, right? So but people go like, well, what if your power's out? Dude, what if your power's out? Like how does that change? That doesn't change anything. Like still you're going to want to like identify your target positively before you go blasting. And these people that go like, yeah, but I got to clear my house. Like why? you know why? Like I don't want to clear my house, to be honest with you. And like in the circumstances that I'm in now, living here, like I'm going to, like I put in that article, I'm gonna hurtle over my bed, Dukes of Hazard style, and call on the speakerphone, point a flashlight at the door, and if anybody kicks through the locked door, I can pretty much assume that they're not there to do me anything good. Um, so that's kind of what I recommend. And I think that if you think about it, think through these problems in terms of like what's the negative outcomes, like Claude teaches, you're going to go through a different algorithm than the things that you see with all the cool guy
Yeah.
entertainment people on Instagram and YouTube that are doing civilian application, making it look like it's high speed entry, direct action type stuff.
Yeah.
That ain't it.
I think in the private citizen world, I think weapon mounted lights on a pistol are pretty much useless. And I know I'm going to upset people by saying that, but when have I ever backed away from upsetting people by the stuff that I say?
Sure.
Um, and I'll even say this though, but for law enforcement, for cops, peace officers, whatever term you want to use, I also think that weapon mounted lights on a pistol are pretty much useless. Uh,
Yeah.
although not necessarily not 100%, but yeah, I'm not a fan of the big ones that create these massive gaps on the
In
holster
the
that allow things to
holster.
get into the trigger guard, because I
Yeah.
think by solving the problem that you solve with the light, you're creating a more significant problem.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think a weapon mounted light that doesn't have a pressure switch is a very good idea. And by pressure switch, I mean by the gripping the gun, you can actually activate the light. Because I just don't see people manipulating the switches on the lights effectively.
Yeah.
Um, the I played the bad guy in a series of active shooter scenarios recently in
Hmm.
darkness and low light. And basically, students had to come find me in a building in an active shooter situation. And I know as in my role of the bad guy, I just shot wherever the lights were.
Yeah.
And I was getting the hits on the students to the point that one like hid just put a handheld light around the corner. That was all that was around, just the corner like his eye. And I
Yeah.
couldn't see his head, but I got him in the hand that was holding the
Yeah.
light. And so if you got the weapon mounted light where there's no way to separate it from the weapon, and so you've got all the rule 4 issues, but then you also got the incoming round issue as they're coming. Now, I can see certain limited applications for them, but again, I do think you got to have pressure switches. You got to have other things with it. Um,
I agree. The
yeah.
one of the things I can say about like the pressure switch, this is disarticulated from a
Hmm.
firearm, so it's not going to
Yeah.
get you in YouTube trouble. But
Hmm.
these are emissary development switches that I saw with Steve
Hmm.
Fisher, and so I don't know if you can quite see, but like one of them kind of has a longer leg on
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
Um, so if you imagine when I put my hands on this gun, and I have my strong hand here, my my forward thumb, because I shoot thumbs forward,
Hmm.
basically is going to rest on the top of this switch so
Yeah.
that when my thumbs are in just the neutral position, it doesn't take much for me to activate it.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool thing, what that helps you not get. If you've used one and you've had it come on in your holster before, you notice that you're just kind of like, and then you go either like, where's that light coming from that's pointing down at the ground?
Yeah.
Or you go like,
What's that burning?
smells like plastic burning in here,
Yeah.
and then you realize your weapon mounted lights on and you're starting
Yeah.
the seat on fire. Um, so yeah, but I mean, I think that Jared Reston, he made a good point about like, contact shots, like, having a light that is longer than the dust
Hmm.
cover of the gun, like gives you a standoff thing. I think that's a valid point, like for up close and personal stuff. But again, like I think back to the time, and I'm sure that you do this too, is like, when we came through originally, like when I when I went to the cadet academy in the early 90s, the only weapon mounted light I saw was the what was it called? Scattergun Technologies
Hmm.
made in Nashville shotgun, an 1187 that had a 60 lumen
Yeah.
Surefire, mounted with like a hose clamp sort of deal.
Yeah.
Uh, to the magazine tube that had a pressure switch on the fore end. And I remember like sitting in the sergeant's car and just like pushing that button, like when I
Yeah.
and the sergeant would be like, "Are you going to keep doing that?" And I'd be like, I can't believe how bright this light is." And he's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, it's pretty amazing, like compared to the old Kell light, And I was
Yeah.
like, "This thing's great." But there was no weapon mounted lights on pistols, like
Right.
nobody had them, like
Yeah.
nobody, it wasn't a thing. So doing the Harry's stuff, which has
Hmm.
literally been around, like, people think that that's a relatively new thing. No,
No.
I mean, that's at least as old as me. I mean,
Yeah.
it's at least 50 years old. It might be 60 years old.
Yeah.
Um, so there's techniques to get around it. And is it as comfortable as using a weapon mounted light and ergonomic? No. Like, do you have to have some upper body shoulder strength to be able to do it?
Yeah.
Yes. But if you can't do that, like, you probably shouldn't be doing the job. So
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things. And like I said, I just think about how people start from like the mission. They don't think about the mission. They just think about like what actions on objective kind of
Yeah.
thing versus like, how do we get to that point? Like, I really
Yeah.
like the thing that, and you know this because you've been the bad guy. That's one of the best things. If you ever, anybody that's like listening that's not affiliated with law enforcement, if you shoot at a range and they're like, "Hey, you're pretty good. Would you like to come be, an aggressor for our force on force training?" Say yes, because it's a great way. It sounds really morbid to say this, but like when you figure out how to be the bad guy and you get really good at being a really good bad guy, like it makes you a
Hmm.
better good guy.
Yeah.
The only difference between good guys and bad guys, we all know the exact same stuff. It's just about like what side of the law are you on? Are you a good guy or are you a bad guy? You know, it's all the same stuff. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, when you figure that out, you realize that like weapon mounted lights, all that kind of stuff. If you're the bad guy, if I'm in the dark to the point where somebody needs to shine a flashlight at me to be able to see me, they can't see me. And if
Yeah.
they don't turn that light on, I can't see them either. So whether it's a flashlight or whether it's night sights on your pistol, if I got night sights on my pistol and I can't see him and he can't see me, what the hell good is his night sights going to do? I'm going to
Yeah.
like shine some green dots around at something that I can't even see. That doesn't make sense. So if you can't positively identify them, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they'll go away and leave you alone. If they're right on top of you, now if they're right on top of you, like Chuck Haggard says, shoot the guy in the ski mask.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, do you need a flashlight to be able
Yeah.
to discern like who's the guy that needs to be shot in this scenario? It's the one that's
Mhm.
attacking you.
Right.
So if he's attacking you, you're gonna have to see him.
Yeah.
Like light's got nothing to do with it at that point, you know?
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where I think people just get so wrapped around the axle about
Yeah.
trying to do the cool guy moves that they don't think about like what that's actually going to look like. It's not
Right.
a Everybody has this idealized fight that they're going to get into, and it's
Right.
BS. It's not a real thing. So,
Well, a handheld light, excuse me, a weapon mounted light on a pistol for a shield operator
mhm,
as the first guy in line of a set
makes sense.
makes sense.
Mhm.
And so everybody on the team needs to have, because they and one of them may have to pick up and use the shield.
Yeah.
Uh, I get that. Well, then that translates down to, well, why are they special? Everybody else wants to have these lights too.
Hmm.
Or we don't want to keep two different holsters in inventory, so we're going to buy the same thing and equip everybody the same way.
Everybody.
I
Yeah.
get that, but then you get it to the private citizen world. Well, the cops had the lights on their guns, so it must be a good idea.
Yeah.
Uh, to me, and I know I'm going to upset private citizen folks that are listening to this. I can't say it without doing that. You ask the question, you're going to get the answer. Weapon mounted light to me is no more big of needed for the private citizen than extended magazine releases and compensators on a 9 millimeter pistol. Those
Yeah.
are all added because people want to do something cool to their
Hmm.
gun and they keep tricking them out. Now, this is America. If you want it, Godspeed, go. Bless you. Go do it. I, I don't carry with a weapon mounted light on my pistol except for when I'm at work because my current agency requires it.
Requires it. Hmm. Yeah.
When it was my decision, I didn't unless I was out actively at night or going into buildings hunting a bad guy.
Hmm.
And I had a separate belt that I would go on and throw on for like a call out and stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, when I was just regular routine working, I didn't run with a weapon mounted light on the gun. Now, the first 10 years, it wasn't an option
Yeah.
because my agency didn't have it.
Right.
And I want to be able to have the light and the gun separate. Now, I understand you can still have that and have a weapon mounted light. I get it. Um, you talked about using the light on the guy that popped out. I've told this story on air before, but it relevant here. My truck broke down coming back from teaching a class in Arkansas in downtown Atlanta. When I say downtown Atlanta, I'm talking about the I-20, I-75, 85 interchange where all the
Mm.
interstates swap. And I
Hmm.
managed to get it off of the ramp into a fire station that was at the bottom of the exit ramp.
Yeah.
And the firefighters let me in to use the bathroom. And then when I went back out, they shut the door and said, you can't leave your truck unattended. Your stuff's going to be gone. And
Yeah.
then they locked the door after I went back out. Yeah. After it got dark, I was trying to kind of stay out in the shadows and everything in the daytime and everything. But as it's getting dark, one of the urban campers saw me and
Yeah.
started coming across the parking lot and everything. And I pulled out a surefire stiletto, not a pro. I mean, not the big one, I guess. Yeah, the stiletto pro, not the stiletto, the new late one, the
Hmm.
1,000 limit one. And I pulled that out and just kind of casually lit them up. And all of a sudden, the sun appeared out of nowhere. And by the way, it also came from Andy Stanford. And
Yeah.
person just stopped dead in their tracks, and then they backed off and they went away. And I put my flashlight back up.
Yeah.
It worked. Now I don't say it's going to work every time. Drawing my pistol in that situation was completely not justified at that
Yeah.
point. But having the light and the pistol separate. Now I get it. I know you can have a handheld light and you can have a pistol mounted light. I get it, but I want to be able to operate them independently of each other.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And even
Well,
then, I don't. 27 years of doing cop stuff. Very rarely have I ever actually activated a weapon light on a pistol. I've always shown a handheld light independently and done it.
hmm,
I just
yeah.
don't see the need.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in that scenario, there's basically like three things that are going to, be possible outcomes for that situation.
Hmm.
One, you light them up with your handheld and they go, oh, no, thank you, and they turn around,
Hmm.
they go the other direction. Maybe they were, it, if it's just a person, some rando, you don't know who it is, like holy smokes, they're covered in blood. They were just in a car accident and 2 blocks
Hmm.
away, and they're coming to you because you're parked at a fire station. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
oh boy, I can't help you, but I know some people that can. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna, make a call. The third thing is you lighten them up. They decided, well, my victim selection process, maybe now it's go time.
Yeah.
Um, and so now it's on, like pointing the weapon mounted light just adds the extra layer of
Yeah.
complexity to it that
Right.
those first two situations, if you really want to split it down to it's a 33 and a third% chance, either way, like
Right.
you got a 66 and 2/3% chance that you're going to be
Yeah.
wrong.
Right.
So but
Right.
with the weapon mounted light you're right every time.
Right. And okay, I got the weapon mounted light on my pistol. If a situation has gotten bad enough that I'm drawing my pistol to point it at somebody, I had enough light to identify that already.
Correct.
I'm not identifying it with the weapon mounted light.
Yeah.
Um, so either the ambient light was enough or I had my handheld and I dropped my pistol and now I still got to do something with the handheld.
Yep.
And I guess there's an argument for just dropping it and
Yeah.
hitting the switch on the pistol light. But at that point in time, you've gone from light, no light to back light again. The situation could have changed.
Yeah.
And I can see some arguments in favor, but you asked for my opinion, you got my opinion.
Sure.
Um,
The other thing that we didn't talk about that I'd say that why
yeah.
another reason I'm not a fan of it, I didn't put this in the article, but it's something that occurred to me later. When I shoot in a weekly league
Hmm.
with Rick Remington,
Yeah.
and um, it's a pistol competition league, and you can run whatever you want. Most everybody, except for the
Yeah.
guy who's winning at number one currently in the open division, who's shooting a 38 Super Race gun, with a
Yeah.
sideways Seymour and a compensator that's that long and weighs 52 ounces. Um, Carries some kind of carry gun, but like a guy was putting his on the other day, and he said, "I only wear this thing for competition because it's really uncomfortable." And I looked, and it was like a carry type gun, like a 43X with a
Hmm.
streamlight on it, but it kind of puts this big bulge that you have to
Yeah.
surround that in kydex to get it to work.
Yeah.
So if you've ever worn an appendix holster before, then it's going to cut into one of two places, either just above your uh, equipment, or it's going to push into the side of your leg, either of which is like not fun.
Hmm. Yeah.
So like if it dissuades you from using it, and you go like, oh, instead of carrying a 11 shot street capable pistol, I'm going to carry this 5 shot J frame as my primary because it's more comfortable. Like I don't like that. I mean,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I love a J frame on my ankle or in my pocket if I absolutely positively have to, but I don't, think that that's a great primary.
Yeah.
If you could carry just a 43X in a good holster without a weapon mounted light on it, I'd rather you go that direction. I think that there's
Yeah.
more utility in that than a weapon mounted light. You're also adding a layer of failure there because
Yeah.
I like these TLR 7s. Like I think they're cool.
Hmm.
I don't have one on any of my carry guns. I just kind of add it for that class and just I'm bored. Um, but there's times where I literally like turn this thing on like 2 or 3 times, and then I go turn it on. I'm like, it's dead. What the heck?
Yeah.
And then you got to take this battery out of the front and recharge it. Um, so there's a layer of failure to that
Yeah.
I'm just not crazy about.
Yeah.
This, the Stiletto Pro, I just plug that thing in, like while I'm watching a
Hmm.
movie, and in
Yeah.
90 minutes it's charged up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
If you pay attention to it, you can hit the program button. It gives you a light that tells you what
when
status
it's
the
up,
battery is. And if it
yeah,
turns amber,
yeah,
well then go charge it up. Because
yeah,
it goes from green to red to nothing
yeah.
like that.
Real quick,
Um,
God bless you,
yeah.
Lee. You actually read the manual.
Yeah. Well, I found out the hard way too. But
Yeah,
yeah. Um, You kind of covered this already, talking about subcaliber rounds and the person asking the question defines subcaliber is less than 38 or 9 millimeter. You kind of already
Mhm.
addressed that when you were talking about the wounding stuff earlier, but anything you want to throw in on that?
Yeah, I mean, so everybody like talks about the underwear kind of gun thing, or
Mhm.
like your shorts gun or whatever. I agree. Like I do that. I mean, I try and kind of like not dress like a bum, but like dress like so I don't look the same as I do like when I'm
Yeah,
in practice because
yeah,
people that are patients tend to invade your privacy when you're out on your own time, asking you work related questions if they recognize you as being their doctor.
hmm,
But the way I get around that is I use a Filster Enigma to carry the same size service pistol, a 4.25 inch M&P that I'd carry when I wear a belt, and I just wear that underneath my sweat shorts when I'm out working out or what, or running errands or what have you. Um, so that I always have like a combat capable pistol with me. Now, if people, for the dozen of you out there who read my website regularly, know that I did get a Shield X, and now I have a pair of Shield X's. So I do like those. If I lived in a state that wasn't silly with a magazine ban, I would have 13 or 15 round mags in that thing, as the law
hmm,
is. I have 10 round magazines for that thing, but it's still um basically a shield sized gun, which I feel is like the floor. I wouldn't want anybody, I think not saying like there isn't, that I don't like Glock 42s. I like Glock 42s. I think there's a use for those.
yeah,
But for regular folks, I kind of think that like the 43X shield size pistols are like the floor for what you'd want to use for like EDC stuff. And yeah, like, do I have shoot. I mean, I had a pair of those new Smith revolvers, the Lipsies UC
hmm,
ones, and I ended up having issues with both of those. So um, I did the Tom Givens thing and let those become somebody else's problem after they were repaired.
hmm,
Just because I don't know, I'm crazy that way. It's kind of like
yeah,
if I sat down in a truck one day and I go, the hell? Like, the seatbelt in this thing doesn't work. Like I put the seatbelt on and then like I hear a rip when I stop at a stoplight and the seatbelt rips in half. Like I've lost faith in this vehicle because of the seatbelt.
hmm,
Yes, it
yeah,
cost me $50,000, but like I'm gonna go get rid of it. It's just kind of what it is. But when a gun like does something like that to me,
yeah,
I can get other guns. You know what I mean? Like my life and like everything that I have at stake isn't worth it to like pack it on something that's not 100%. And it
yeah,
might be great for some people. And I know some people that have had great success with them. And I love Brian and DB, like I think they're good guys. I
hmm,
like Jason Klossner at Lipsy's. I have other Lipsy's guns that I'm 100% pleased with. But that one, I don't know. I just got a pair of lemons somehow.
yeah,
So yes, um, is there a place for those? Yeah, there's a place, but like, what I'd ask the person that's asking that is what do you think the place is? Like, what's your application? If you're a person that like wears regular clothes for work and you can hide a gun and you realize that you're like much more capable with a full size gun, run with a full size gun. If you are going to carry one of those guns that's that small, like do the modified test with one. Like do the modified test with a J frame, and do 10 yards. You got 5 seconds to do 5 shots from the ready. That's a drill you can shoot at any range, even if they've got holster drawing restrictions and things. Um, get out your timer and run it. And if you can't do it, then don't carry that.
yeah,
I think there's a lot to be said, like John Hearn and I have talked about this and I've tried to like write it up, but it's one of these things where when I think about this article in my head, it seems like it's about 4,000 words, but then I actually sit down and like start to bang out pieces of it and I go, it's 2 paragraphs.
yeah,
But like John and I were talking about this with the SIG P365. When the SIG P365
yeah,
came out, I wrote an article called The 21st Century J Frame. And you've read a lot of my articles.
yeah,
There's like the layer that, gets you clickbait title, like
Yeah.
that gets you to the page.
Yeah.
Well, I do that on purpose because I want people to read it. But there's usually like a hidden message in there that
Yeah.
people always seem to overlook my sarcastic humor. And I called it the 21st Century J Frame. It was an article about the SIG P365. But if you read it, what it actually says is the Ruger LCR is the 21st Century J Frame.
Yeah.
And then I talk about the P365 and how it basically does everything that either of those will do in just a slightly larger package.
Yeah.
So, but it's easier to shoot and it's easier to load and reload. And it's easier to clear malfunctions with,
Mm.
even though you kind of have to do like this, when in doubt, pinky out sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
because, in my hand, like it barely comes to the bottom of my ring
Yeah.
finger. But, everybody except for about three people missed the joke. So, with that, I would say like, if somebody's like, I gotta have, this sub caliber gun to keep in my pocket because I read an article about it or
Yeah.
whatever, I would say like, well, what's that do that your P365 doesn't already do with just a holster change? Like most of the time it's something as simple as that. And I mean, like John and Sarah at Filster, like they have a exceptional product that they've created. And yeah, it's kind of a niche sort of thing, I guess. But I mean, I have like a rack in my room because
Mhm.
like where I get dressed in my closet.
Mm.
And it's got three things hanging on it. It's got my next belt that's my EDC belt that I wear anytime I have pants or shorts on that have belt loops. It's got a Galco Miami Classic shoulder holster for an M&P, because I wear that sometimes when I go hiking. And
Mhm.
then oh, and also because you can put it on in the middle of the night if there's a bump in the night and you've got,
Mhm.
a magazine and pistols, even if you ain't got drawers on, um, or pants on rather. But I got an Enigma, so
Mhm.
the like whatever I'm wearing, I've got something there hanging on that rack that I can use with everything I wear from a tuxedo all the way down to like shorts and a tank top. So I would tell people like, carry what you can shoot best. And if you're one of those weirdos that like shoots a 43X better than you shoot a 19 or a 17 or a Glock 45, then man, have at it. But like I'm not that guy and I'm pretty good with most guns that you put in my hand. I
Yeah.
always shoot like a larger gun better than I shoot a small gun.
I don't really have anything sub caliber other than a couple of 32 revolvers. I've got
Hmm.
a Ruger LCR, but I've got the Rogers grips on that to give me a three finger grip, so it's not really small
Yeah.
anymore. And I do have one of the Lipsy 632s, but I got a good one
Yeah.
that works. And
Yeah.
I can easily make 15-yard shots with that 632.
Yeah.
I don't shoot the LCR as well.
Yeah.
I I don't have like 380s and any of that, and in my opinion on the 22 long rifle we've covered in a couple of other episodes recently, so I won't go into that. Um, I still have it, a Smith 642 and 38 that I would carry um, in what I called a headache zone, somewhere that was not illegal for me to be carrying, but there was
But it's hard.
headaches if I got discovered. Like for
Hmm.
instance, if I was flying armed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I carried the 642 on my person and had the other stuff
Hmm.
secured in the game. Or if I'm going certain places that, yeah, I'm not illegal, but it's going to cause a lot of hoopla if somebody discovers it.
Sure.
Um, the 632 and the LCR have replaced the 642 um, just because psychologically, I feel more comfortable with 6 rounds than five. And I don't
Hmm.
think there's much of a difference between 38 and 32 as far as the performance that I'm going to be getting.
I don't think
Uh,
so either.
and plus, the 32 to me is more shootable than the 38
Hmm.
out of a gun that size. My other gun that I carry in that same capacity is a Glock 43,
Hmm.
which is 9 millimeters, so it's not sub caliber.
But it's loud and
Yeah,
it's hard to hold on to.
yeah. I just I would rather carry sub caliber than be unarmed.
Hmm. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely.
And for people that if that fits your lifestyle, if that fits what you need, then that's what you do. Um, I have gone out in the world with a 25 automatic in my pocket.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's not
Oh,
ideal.
I was I started to tell you the Hearn story and then I blew it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um, so I think, John and I have had this conversation when the SIG P365 came out. Um, the 10 shot one, with just the
mhm,
sights on it, this is before dots became a thing.
yeah,
It was like, a gun that you could kind of replace your J-frame purpose with. So
mhm,
now you could carry it, with a Dark Star Gear metal clip holster on your shorts, and it's not so heavy it's gonna make your pants fall down, that kind
mhm,
of thing. You could stick it in a pocket holster and do all that. Well, John and I talked about, it's a very short barreled gun. I think it's what, a 3 inch barrel.
yeah,
Um, so it's, pushing the limits of ballistic performance for,
yeah,
basically 9 millimeter. But it's a good get me out of trouble gun,
yeah,
you know. So John and I were talking when the fuse came out, which if you read that article that I wrote, 6 years ago, I said, to me, with this magazine technology where they can jam 12 rounds into a magazine that's the same size as the Shield 7 round magazine, makes me wonder like if you blew this gun up to the point where it was a duty sized gun, well, it
mhm,
would kind of make everything else sort of silly. Well, we found out that that's not really true, but like with a fuse, I mean, you do
yeah,
have like a 4.25 inch barrel,
yeah,
um, and it's optics ready, and Safari Land makes duty
mhm,
holsters for it now and stuff, and I guess
yeah,
there's 23 round mags that you can get that aren't ridiculous. So there's that. But the difference between yes, they're both P365s. That's a hard thing to say. P365s. However, one is kind of a save me only gun, because it's
mhm,
got a short sight radius. I
yeah,
mean, if I really had to, I could probably shoot, on a B8 out to 15 for sure, probably 20 with iron sights and my eyes in the shape that
yeah,
they're in currently. But if I put a dot on a fuse,
yeah,
25, I'm gonna own the B8, and maybe out to like 50 in a mall or a Walmart, I'd feel
mhm,
confident like making, an A zone hit. So it's the difference between like a save me gun versus a
yeah,
save other people gun, and I kind of
yeah,
think about that the same way. Like, um, and what that is for everybody is going to be a different
mhm,
thing. Some people might not even ever be in the save other people kind of thing. That takes a different kind of person. And even though I'm not a, you know, professional first responder anymore, um, I can't, I think, well, I don't think, I know that I will
yeah,
do that kind of thing again, just because to me, it's just
yeah,
is what you do,
yeah,
um so um that's what I'd say about the sub caliber thing.
yeah,
If you are going to go sub caliber, consider that you're really shrinking your envelope of effectiveness.
yeah. All right, and then the final thing for tonight is someone wanted to know your thoughts on. They asked about using double stack, like 1911 type guns, specifically the platypus, because apparently this person knows you have platypi.
I do. I have two of them. So when I heard your interview with Eric Lund,
Uh-huh.
and he said something about like, paraphrasing here, but like the, like 2011 guns, the platypus and stuff like that, are kind of enthusiast guns. Well, I mean, if you're a civilian defender type of folk, then you're an enthusiast.
Hmm.
Congratulations. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're you are. Like there's nobody that does this voluntarily that's not an enthusiast. Like you're an enthusiast. Not to like dog Eric. I'm not saying that. I'm just
Yeah.
kind of like building on what he's talking about. So
Yeah.
what he was talking about is basically like if you run one of those guns, it requires a different level of maintenance and it
Hmm.
requires a different level of understanding of the platform. So unless
Yeah.
you really want to get into it for, some kind of increase in performance,
Hmm.
and that's going to vary like person to person. Um, you know, uh, how much of a hill do you want to climb there? The guns are more expensive.
Yeah.
Platypus is, somewhere between 1,700 and $2,000, depending on what you get. In
Hmm.
my opinion, having been in the game now for about 30 years, like I think it's the best custom or semi-custom wide body gun I've seen. I've seen staccatos have problems, and knock on wood, I've got a
Hmm.
5-inch platypus with an acro and a full length dust cover,
Yeah.
um, with a conventional barrel that's had zero stoppages, and I'm about 9,500 rounds. And then I have a 4.25 inch with a bull barrel and a full rail with an SRO that's got about 5,000. I shoot about 500, between 300 and 500 rounds a week now.
Yeah.
Um, 50 in competition, and then between like 300 and 500 in practice, and classes. Uh, I've turned into that guy now that I go to the range almost every lunch break now, because
Yeah.
the range is located, like 3 miles from my office, which is
Yeah.
convenient, and also, you know, kind of makes you get, obsessed about things. But
Yeah.
so, um, I'm very happy with mine. I ran mine. I've run mine in training classes as well. And it's exceptionally accurate. The trick is kind of like what Tom said, is like, when you're determining like what you're going to carry in that gun. I don't carry, I mean, sorry, I use one of those guns strictly for competition. I use the one with the SRO for competition. I wouldn't have any issues like carrying that gun, in
Hmm.
a either of them, in a in a you know enthusiast slash civilian defender classification. But it's not a small gun. I mean,
Yeah.
it's light, but like, a 5-inch 1911 is a 5-inch 1911. It's just like carrying a Glock
Yeah.
34, or just like carrying a 5-inch M&P. So it's not a small gun. I have to sit down a lot of the day, in my life,
Hmm.
just by the nature of my work. Sitting down with some holsters is fine. Sitting down with other appendix holsters is, you don't really want to sit down. Um, I purposefully got I think they call it the prickle grip variant
Hmm.
on both of mine, and that thing will eat shirts.
Yeah.
Um, if it's my t-shirts, I don't really care. My scrub shirts are a little more expensive, and I think it just looks, if I know me, like if I had a surgeon or a doctor or physician like walk into my room and their shirt has holes in it, because it's going to make me think like, you're kind of ratty,
Yeah.
um so there's that. But as far as like functional accuracy, oh, like I was saying, Tom says like, get the best performing loads for the caliber, so like 147 HST, 124 HST, uh, DPX 115s,
Hmm.
um, and then like the gold dots and the what have yous, that are all kind of the similar things, and then shoot them, and then find a round that shoots like close to that same point of impact at that range with that same point of aim. Since I'm shooting these in competition, I want something kind of like more towards the other thing, like,
Yeah.
so with these ones, I found the max load that I like, and I use that for practice, but I also use it to compete. And then I found carry rounds that hit close to it. And I was
Yeah.
lucky that they're 147 HSTs, and then 147 Lawman flat point TMJs are ridiculous. Like one hole, or like a 4 round hole plus one
Hmm.
at 25 yards on a 3-inch paster. I'm happy with that. The other thing is, so I'll probably, to answer your question, do I like the platypus? Yes. Do I think it's a silly name, like a lot of people were criticizing it? No. For civilian defender use, I don't think it is. You know why?
Why?
Because a platypus, unbeknownst to many, actually is one of the few animals, it's a weird mammal,
Hmm.
because it lays eggs, it has the beak of a duck, it has webbed feet,
All right.
and a flat tail like a beaver, but it actually has spurs that can inject venom. So it's a true defensive weapon. So a platypus makes absolute sense for the
Yeah.
civilian defender because the difference between law enforcement, military, and the civilian defender context is we have no offensive capability.
Uh,
We have counter ambush capability. So that's what that animal was designed for, is for
uh,
counter ambush. I don't know if anybody else has made this connection. I can't be that smart. I'm sure the platypus people at Stealth Arms know this. If they hear it, like, I will continue to spend my money with you,
uh,
because I really like it. However, I was going to say the next one that I get, I probably will get it with an SRO because I feel like the SRO conceals better than an acro. An
uh,
acro kind of makes this bump at the
yeah.
back right corner of it where your shirt hits it. But
Yeah.
with the acro, I mean, sorry, with the SRO, it's got that rounded
Yeah.
sort of hoop that doesn't seem to print as well. And I don't know what it is, but like my eye for aesthetics, when I look at the like a 1911 or a 2011 pattern pistol with an SRO, it just looks like an elegant. Uh, you know, I imagine Ken Hackathorn wearing a monocle. When I look at a 2011 or 1911 with an SRO,
Yeah.
I think it's a cool look.
Yeah.
And you know, I, I'm 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 right behind you, Ken. 28, 30 years away or something. So um I think it's a cool look. I don't mean that as a dig. I mean, I think it looks
Yeah.
cool. And the SRO I really, really like because it's very easy to um, find the dot. The glass is really clear.
Yeah.
I like how you can lock it out to a certain setting. Um, and I like everything about it. So,
Yeah.
um, but yes, so with the platypus, do I think the platypus is good to go for regular people? Yes. Um, it is a Series 70 gun. Some people will tell you that that's not drop safe. Um, Stealth Arms insists that it is drop safe because it has to have um, the grip safety and the manual safety off to be able to fire.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I haven't tested that. It's an expensive gun. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess I could, but I don't like destructive testing if I don't have to. But I am going to buy another one. I will buy one with a bull barrel, a 5-inch slide, no rail, no Picatinny
Mhm.
rail, um, because it's makes it hard to find holsters. The
Yeah.
only holsters I've found that fit that thing um, correctly to the point where it's like not a compromise is the Dark Star Gear Apollo,
Okay.
which is cool because it's a good holster and it's not stupid expensive. It's not $135 for a plastic holster these days. Just kind of
Yeah.
seems silly. Sorry, Spencer. But like when you can get, a JM or a Dark Star Gear holster for like 75 bucks or less, I just think, they basically do the same thing.
Yeah.
Um,
I played around with the platypus a little bit. A couple of my colleagues bought them very recently, and actually got a recall on them from South Arms.
I saw
They
that. Yeah.
asked for them wanting to come back because they wanted to check something at the Sears, and I don't know
Yeah.
if it was material or something else.
The
Um,
I will tell you when I got my first one, I had about a 6-month wait to get it.
mhm,
And when I talked about getting one, Rick said, "Well, if you're going to get one, like try my staccato
yeah.
in a match before you get one." His staccato had an SRO. I'd never
Mhm,
shot a wide body 1911 in my life. I mean, a
yeah.
2011 rather. I hadn't shot one. I've shot 1911s, of course.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, when I first started training with Tom, he still carried a 1911.
Yeah.
Um, so I shot it in a match with Rick, and the guy who's the leaderboard leader watching. And I shot the best score I'd ever shot. Like, it was like a
Yeah.
297 out of three or out of 500. Sorry,
Mhm,
a 497 out of 500. Um, and so I was like, okay, I'm getting it. So I ordered it the next day. It took 6 months to get there. Um, that one runs with Glock mags, runs with um, Magpul mags,
mhm.
and I tried those new Mechagar
Mega.
mags,
Yeah.
and those weren't for me. I don't know
Yeah.
what I just didn't like them. Um,
Yeah.
they worked fine, but I didn't like them.
Yeah.
And bear in mind I'm in a restricted state, right? So
Yeah.
then when I got the new one, I told myself, all right, I'm gonna run this 5-inch gun in Steve Fisher's low light class. And if I like it, then I'm gonna order another one so I have a pair and a spare.
Yeah.
And so I took the class. I liked it. I took the class on a Tuesday. I ordered it on a Wednesday. I filled out the paperwork for it on a Friday because they actually had the one I wanted in
Oh, yeah.
stock.
Yeah.
So that worked out perfect. That one, it was interesting. There was a thing in there that said, "Hey, thank you for buying with us again." Weird thing, the 10 round Glock magazines don't work as well in this as the Magpul ones. So use the Magpul ones.
Okay.
I haven't noticed a difference really between the 10 round mags
Yeah.
with the 10 round OEM Glock mags versus the Magpul 10 round mags in that particular gun. But because they said that, that's what I use.
Yeah.
Um, but that thing just works. And I've let other people shoot it and they like it. They don't shoot it as accurately as I do. So I know that it's like partially me and not just the gun. But like
Yeah.
the first thing that people always say is like, wow, this thing's light. And it's an aluminum frame. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
light. It's not like it's a 44-inch steel frame, or sorry, 44-ounce steel frame 9 millimeter. It's
Yeah.
not it. So yeah, I think it's a cool gun. I've thought I keep on like working with it, and at some point I'm probably going to end up sending an email to Tom because I feel like there's some piece of maybe not arcana, but like some piece of lost knowledge. Like I
Yeah.
know that I know that Tom's rationale when he switched from a 1911 to a Glock 35 was, the 1911 is a two bad guy gun, and the Glock 35, which was in 40, is a 3 to 5 bad guy gun.
Yeah.
Um, but like it kind of makes me wonder if I could travel back in the past and be like, "Hey Tom, here's a platypus." He'd be like, "Well, that's a stupid name." um, until I told him the thing about the poisonous spur. But
Yeah.
if the thing worked, like, would you use it, or was there like something else, that
Yeah.
you didn't say? And when you said like bolt action rifles, I've been fiddling around with this scout rifle thing now for about 5 years, and I've got like several of them,
Hmm.
including a Remington Mohawk, which was the original scout rifle that Cooper used, a Remington Model 600 Mohawk. So there's going to be something coming out about that. And, all of us in the gun industry or in the training industry, like recently, you know, haven't been like, I don't want to say like super tough guys, but like, we're men. We're not going to admit that like we have issues as we age. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So everybody's like, it's stupid. I see these videos with these, kids that are in their 20s, their 20s and their early 30s, talking about like the scout rifle thing is stupid. Like, why would you put the scope way out there? Well, Junior, just wait until you have to start wearing, progressive eyeglasses and you realize that, like, I have the same deer rifle that I've had since I was 19.
Hmm.
Um, and now when I put that thing up to my eye, I can't see even adjusting the eye box, on the ocular, I can't see the crosshair anymore. Like it doesn't. Just looks like a black. It's very hard to be able to see. But when I put that thing about 12 inches from the end of my nose, I could see it perfectly. And so it always kind of made me wonder, like Jeff Cooper at that time when he wrote that article was like 1981. About
Hmm.
the general purpose rifle. So he would have been, between like 50 and 60 at the time when, your eyesight is starting to go. And I have seen videos of him, like where he's, reading stuff like this, up at the podium. So I know he had glasses to read, which makes me think that his distance vision was still good,
Hmm.
but his up close vision was, my distance vision, this part of my glasses from here up is uncorrected. I have 20/10 distance vision, luckily. But
Yeah.
up here, up close, like if I take my glasses off, I can't read my phone. My son like always laughs at me because my print is about that big on my phone.
Yeah.
Um, so it kind of made me wonder, like, is the whole scout scope thing? Yes, it does these other things, allows you access to the action. It allows you to, shoot with both eyes open. and have less of the downrange area obscured by an optic. But maybe there was a thing in there where he's like, and I can actually see the damn crosshair because it's 12, to 14 inches from my nose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that there's maybe things like that that, people were like, oh, they just did that because, rifle optics at the time sucked. No, they didn't really. I mean, Leopold was doing everything that they were doing in the 80s that they're doing now. I mean, yes, there's been advancements, but it's not like they were using horsehair crosshairs back in
Mhm.
those days.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that kind of stuff where I think, did these guys start carrying? Well, I don't know about this. Here's another thing. So I noticed that everybody, not everybody, but a lot of law enforcement guys these days are wearing, the Safari Land belt loop, like in our days, like for the SS3, like had a fixed
Mhm.
cant on it, but you could order this other one, that changed it like with a jacket
Yeah.
slot kind of thing, or a high ride
Yeah.
one. But the cant was always like with the muzzle pointing, like I think it was 10 degrees to the rear or 15 degrees
Hmm.
to the rear. And that was kind of like duty holsters. Well, in the town that I worked, my hometown, Coopeville, Washington, Hoyt Holster, that used to be in California and made police
Hmm.
holsters for a lot of places in Southern California and here. You could actually go there, and there was like basically, I don't know what you call him, like he's a leathersmith, but he was almost like a tailor. You'd stand on this
Hmm.
box, and they'd give you different belts to try on and stuff till they found the duty belt that you liked, and then they would measure the shank on the holster and make your holster the width.
Hmm.
Well, a bunch of these guys that are like my age now, then I noticed that they all had these custom made rearward cant holsters. And I always thought it was so cool. It looked like a gunfighter, because they'd always, have their muzzle to the rear. And I always thought like, oh, these guys are like gunfighter badasses. That's why they have their, SIG P220s in these reverse cant
Hmm.
holsters. And then you remember in that book, Code 3 Officer Down, it was like, I think he called them like butt bumpers and nut pushers or something like that.
Hmm.
Like if the holster was forward canted, it was like a nut bumper. And if it was pointed too far to the rear, it was a butt something or other. Anyway,
Hmm.
the whole point is that it made it easier to disarm if your gun was more canted to the rear than it was to the front, to be able to defend
Hmm.
it. Well, I mean, that's more of a training thing than a holster position
Yeah.
thing. But I thought it was a cool like gunfighter thing. It didn't have anything to do with that. It had to do with the fact that these guys were now 50 years old, and a lot of them, had been in the military or had been athletes of some kind, and now their shoulders were screwed up. So like they couldn't go all the way back
Hmm.
with their holster, to because their rhomboids were shot. They couldn't pull their scapula closer to their spine anymore. So when they would drop their hand down with the gun with the muzzle forward, their hand just fell to the butt of the gun, and you're off to the races. So there's a lot of these things I feel like we never talked about the real reason. We
Yeah.
just said that it was because, well, I want that
Yeah.
gunfighter forward camp. Now
Yeah.
these kids that I see these days, they're wearing uniform holsters that have like a aftermarket holster adapter that hooks to their belt that
Yeah.
you can cant the muzzle that way. They're doing it because it looks cool or because
Yeah.
it like gives you a faster draw, but it's kind of like, you
Yeah.
know, you're copying the look of something without knowing like why it was done in the
Oh
first
yeah.
place.
Yeah. Yeah. Just my opinion on the platypus and stuff like that, real quick. Uh, I've had a chance to play with a little bit. A couple of colleagues bought them. I don't see enough of an improvement gain for me to spend the money
Yeah,
for for what I am doing. Now, if I was out shooting USPSA, trying to chase a card or something like that, I might would have a different opinion. But for what I'm typically using the guns for, and I'm not saying anything negative about them at all. If Stealth Farms were to say, "Hey, buddy, we're going to send you one of these things," I'll be great.
yeah,
But one Stealth Platypus or Staccato HD or
yeah.
whatever is the price of
Agree.
four Glocks for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, buying at
Oh
Blue Label
yeah,
prices and everything
that's
like
right.
that.
Yeah,
Um, it's 4 Glocks for me, four, 3 to 4, depending on what you're doing, getting which models you're getting, and then you got the optic and everything on top of that.
Yeah,
I, if you got more resources than I do, God bless you. Go right at it.
sure.
To me, I just
Yeah,
have made the value judgment that I'm not doing it right now. Now I am in the process of looking at a pistol, looking for a pistol, and I can't decide on what I want to get.
yeah,
Um, I'm having still some recovery with my grip issues from the last surgery, which if I was just an office worker would make a difference. But with
yeah.
shooting, I'm having a harder time recovering from the sport hand surgery than I did the strong hand surgery, and I'm having trouble maintaining my support hand grip. So I'm kind of playing
Gotcha.
around with a couple of different things that I might be able to grip a little better. Um, but I still carry a Glock every day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But I mean, you're also
it's
like
yeah,
required to do for
yeah,
work. So it'd kind of be
yeah,
like, you know, if I have
yeah,
to wear, you know, if I have to wear whatever
yeah.
for work, like given the choice, am I going to wear something completely different? Or am I going to
Hmm.
wear the same thing? I'm gonna wear the
Yeah,
same thing, you know?
yeah.
Um,
I, I'll just say this: I don't see for the typical private citizen or duty type use enough of a performance gain
yeah,
to spend the money. I'm not
sure.
talking about folks that are out playing a game.
Hmm.
And if you and they're all for people wanting to go out and play games and everything
Hmm.
with guns. There's more reasons to own a gun than just defensive
Defense.
purposes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, I just for me, I'm not seeing enough of a performance gain
Make it worth it.
to make it worth the money. I'm not saying there's not one under certain circumstances. I was teaching a
Yeah.
class and uh, student showed up with a staccato, whatever the big steel frame one is.
Hmm.
And a couple other students said, well, we want to see what you can do with that. And I took that one and I ran it pretty daggum good. But I'm like, wow, this is big and heavy and everything. I wouldn't want to carry this around all day. It's a nice pistol, sure. Handed it back to him and
Yeah.
went right back to my Glock. But if your mileage varies, have at it.
Yeah.
Have at it.
My thing was is I kind of wanted to like get familiar with the 2011/1911
Hmm.
manual of arms because it's different. So
Yeah.
like the thing that people don't think about is
Yeah.
like let's say like I'm starting from a ready position, so if
Hmm.
I Tom Given's class, right? All right, draw
Yeah.
to the ready. So gun comes
Yeah.
out. I'm at the
Yeah.
low ready.
Yeah.
My finger is straight. My gun is on safe.
Right.
So now when the gun comes up to the eye target line, the safety comes off and my finger, goes
Hmm.
on the trigger.
Yeah.
But like as soon as, bang, 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 bang,
Yeah.
and now I bring the gun back down to the ready, finger straight, safety back on.
Yeah.
And then, you put your thumb on the hammer when you are
Yeah.
holstering it. So that's a different thing than carrying a striker fired gun.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
wanted to be able to like automate those skills. The other thing
Yeah.
is like I like playing these gun games, but I cannot bring myself to buy like could I buy one? Yeah, well, I mean, hell, I
Yeah.
could have one made just for me,
Hmm.
of some race gun, in 38 super or 9mm major or whatever,
Yeah.
and like soup it up and put a stupid huge funnel on it and all this kind of
Yeah.
crap. But I just can't bring myself to that.
Yeah.
I have no desire to compete with a gun that I couldn't carry on the street.
Right. And
So,
most of my students these days are, government funded gateway students.
yeah,
Um, I don't want them to see me shooting what they would consider to be a tricked out special gun,
a race gun. Yeah,
even though staccatos and platypus, they're kind of semi
they're getting
custom
a,
type thing.
yeah. Hmm.
They're not full on race guns like folks in the gun community would see. I don't want the students to look at what I'm shooting going thinking one of two things. He's only able to do that because he's got that special gun,
Yeah,
or two, uh, I'll never be able to do that because I don't have a special gun like that.
yeah,
But if I'm
yeah,
shooting a Glock or I'm shooting an M&P just like them,
yeah,
then that takes that out.
yeah,
So it's I just don't want to either give people a crutch or give people an excuse
yeah.
to do it. And
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, I'm not like taking anything away. Like the dude that is number
mhm,
one, he's been number one for a long time. He's a grandmaster
yeah,
USPSA shooter. Um, and that gun, in USPSA, if you're shooting against other guys that have, open guns, then,
Hmm.
like that's
Yeah.
cool. But like when you're shooting an open gun against people that are, have street guns,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
last week he shoots a 499 and I shoot a 497.
Yeah.
I'm coming for you,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna catch you one of these days.
Yeah.
Um, I, so
Yeah.
we're 5 weeks in, and I think I'm down like 16 points to
Right.
him. So
Yeah.
I'm 16 points behind him in second
Yeah.
place, but like I'm shooting a gun that has a
Yeah.
4.5, 5 pound trigger.
Yeah. I demonstrated
So
the Bakersfield to drill call to a class the other day, and one of the guys that's got one of the fancy staccatos was there. He might have been shooting a platypus. He's either shooting a platypus or staccato, and he shot it too.
yeah,
And I beat him with my my Gen 5 Glock.
yeah,
And like I say, I don't know that I would have beat him anymore with the fancy gun,
sure,
hey, but
yeah.
hey, we've actually probably been going close to 2 hours.
Okay, well, we don't want people to tune out because it's too long.
uh, I know we were actually going to start at 9:30. We ended up starting a little earlier, and I'm showing 11:24, and it is 11:24 Sunday
Yeah,
night.
you got to go to bed.
I'm on the East Coast,
Yeah,
and I still got to download this and then upload it back to all the feeds and everything.
yeah. It's not even dark here yet.
Yeah,
No, I'm
yeah, yeah. It's been dark here for hours because the government
yeah, it's
decided to manipulate time. But,
yeah.
man, as always, I appreciate you jumping in tonight, and I appreciate you spending your time doing this tonight.
Sure.
Anything you
Thanks for
want to
having me.
anything you want to point out, mention before we get off?
If you're interested, in what I have to say, my only point of contact with the outside world now is civiliandefender.com. Or I'm saying this
Mhm.
now because we're in the revolver renaissance,
Yeah,
is revolverscience.com. I had
yeah.
it way before it was cool.
There you go.
Since
Yeah,
2013,
there you go.
before William April decided to talk me into changing it to civiliandefender.com.
There
So
you go. There
accept
you go.
no substitutes.
I remember when it was revolverscience.com.
Yeah, I remember when it was too, because I had 6 people that read it.
There you
You,
go.
Claude, Chuck, William,
Yeah, you
Tom.
can name all of us.
Yeah. I would
Well,
I would publish an article and then I'd get 6 text messages like, "Hey man, good piece. Appreciate it." And I'd be like,
it's like when you get
You're
another
welcome."
clit and you go, "Oh wow, Sherman's up tonight."
That's right. Cecil must not be able to sleep. What's the
Yeah.
deal? Yeah,
Well, there you go,
exactly.
man. Well, hey, I appreciate you jumping on here Sunday night,
Thanks for having me.
and to the audience, we know that your number one asset is your time. Thank you for choosing to spend it with us.